If you've spent years doing inner work and your outer world still hasn't shifted in the way you hoped, maybe you suspect something else is at play. Maybe you've been in the personal development space for years, like I have, but heard a different story. Not always spoken out loud, but often felt. That if your life isn't working the way you hoped, there's a layer you haven't healed yet, that you haven't put in enough work. I believed that for a long time. And the hardest part is that the inner work was real, the shifts were real, but so was the plateau. Things only changed for me when I took a break from the space and asked the question, what is money? Not what are my beliefs about money, but what is money as a system? Turns out it's true. There was another layer to my programming that I was unaware of. It's just something that is never questioned in the space. So today I want to take you on the journey that I went on to understand why, at a certain point, more personal work may not resolve the pain that we experience in our own lives or that we see in the collective. Let's start with the world around us. When we look out, we may notice environmental degradation, racial injustice, poverty, hunger, war, global corporate monopolies that own everything. These things may look like they're unrelated, but they all have one thing in common. For some reason, they all come back to money. But it's not just any kind of money. It is fiat money. Fiat is a Latin word that means to declare or to decree. It shall be so, let it be done. And in the case of money, an authority declares it to have value. The dollars, euros, pesos, yen, lira, whatever currency we use every day. So no matter where you're born on the planet, if you're using cash, coins, or a debit card or any kind of money, you're using a fiat currency. So where does this money come from? What is that authority that says it has value? Well, there's three main entities that create money. The first ones being central banks, and these are the banks of banks. They're the ones that print the money, and they issue debt in the economy. They work in tandem with governments that create money in a bunch of different ways, including jobs and subsidies. But the group that actually creates the most money in the system is actually commercial banks. These are the banks of everyday people, and when we deposit our money in the bank, they can lend out much more. So if we deposit $1,000, for example, they can lend out $900, creating even more money that didn't exist. I'll come back to what this means for us in a moment. But first, I want to give you a sense of scale. We're going to focus on the question, how much money has been created since 2020? And this is a key date. So to try to visualize money, we can see a person standing next to a little pile of $100 bills that makes up 1 million. Now, 100 million would be 1 pallet. 1 billion is 10 pallets. But in order to imagine the scale of 1 trillion, we have to think of an entire football field and put double stacked pallets in there. It's a massive amount of money. Since 2020, the United States has printed trillions of dollars, adding a flood of money to the economy. And if you're thinking, well, that's in the United States, it doesn't really affect me. Remember, this is a global economic monetary system, and the United States sits at the top of it. What happens there ripples out to everyone. In the years following 2020, the United States printed roughly 40% of all the money that's ever been in circulation in its entire history. This is a thing I want us to sit with for a moment because this isn't abstract policy news. This is context for why so many of us feel like we're doing everything right and are still falling behind. Well, you may wonder, what does money printing have to do with the problem? How does it affect us? Well, here's an analogy to explain. Imagine we're sitting on the beach. Sand is everywhere, and I pick up some sand and come over to you and offer you to sell you some sand. You're probably going to say no because sand is abundant, it's everywhere. No one pays for sand on the beach just like we don't pay for the air that we breathe. But if I found a diamond on the sand, that would be different. They're rare, scarce, and valuable. So let's bring it back to abundant money. Abundant money is just like the abundant sand on the beach. The more money there is in the system, the less value it holds. Instead, in order to have value, it has to flow into something that's actually necessary, something that does have value. Things like land and real estate. Abundant money flows into things we actually need, like groceries, healthcare, transportation. And this is exactly why the cost of everything keeps going up. Everything gets more expensive the more abundant money there is in the system. This phenomenon is called inflation, and the root cause of inflation is the money printing. Now, sometimes when I do this presentation, I ask people, where do you think inflation comes from? And they say to me, well, grocery store owners, greedy businesses, corporations, politicians. And those are real manifestations, but they're on top of something much deeper. The root cause is the fiat system itself. Now you may be wondering, well, why can't they just stop printing money if that's what's causing the problems? The thing is, this system requires money printing. It's a debt-based system. It's based on credit. It has to issue more currency in order to exist. Central banks, governments, commercial banks, they cannot stop printing money. If they did, the entire system would collapse, and we saw it recently in 2008. But this isn't a new phenomenon. This has been 5,000 years of human history repeating over and over. One recent example is Weimar Germany, where the money was so abundant that it was cheaper to burn the money itself rather than to go buy wood. Kids were playing with it in the streets. It had no value at all. Sometimes we think this could never happen in the West, and yet. But what does this mean for us today? It means that our money loses value every year, regardless of how hard we work. Imagine someone comes to your home and steals 2% of your stuff. You may not notice. If they came and sold 5% of your stuff every year, maybe you'd start to notice, but maybe not. But how about if they stole 10% of your stuff year over year? That's what's been happening since 2020, and that's why more people are noticing. The cost of everything, groceries, rent, healthcare, has been increasing in the West. We're at the end of the cycle, but the question is, are we going to let it repeat? And this is where it gets personal. My question is, why do we even want money in the first place? And when I ask the groups that I present to this question, they often say, I want to free myself from my job and spend time with my family. I want somewhere safe to live. I want to go on vacation, travel. I want to have food to eat. Nobody in the room has ever said to me, I want a big pile of cash at home. So what we actually want from the money is the ability to buy things. We want purchasing power. So let's have a look at how our purchasing power has evolved over time. In 1995, a $20 bill could buy maybe a cart full of food. In 2015, a half a cart. But today, maybe a quarter cart. How is that? And no matter what currency you're using, dollars, euros, pesos, yen, change the unit and see if you experience the same thing. What we're seeing here is that even though the money is the same over time, the purchasing power is not. The same bill buys less and less over time. That's the paradigm that we were born into. We've tacitly agreed and accepted that it's normal that money loses value every year. Our stored energy, our work, gifts, time, and life force converted into money quietly loses its ability to do what we need it to do. I want to show you something that makes this viscerally clear. What can you buy with this $100 billion Zimbabwe bill? When I ask the room, usually people say a car, a vacation, or a loaf of bread. In reality, 3 eggs. All those numbers and you can just buy 3 eggs. I know that sounds extreme, that we've heard all of these stories about why these things are happening in every other country. The truth is, our inflation was exported to every other country because we're closer to the top of the monopoly. I'm not saying that's a good thing at all. Being in the West just means it's happening at a slower rate, but it's still happening. Here's the crux of the problem. The fiat system creates 2 main classes: asset owners, or people who own property, land, stocks, things that appreciate or increase in value, and wage workers, people who trade their time for money, often giving back their income and resources to the asset owners. In this system, money printing is very beneficial to asset owners because the more money in the system, the more it flows into scarce assets, which they own, the more the value of their assets increases. However, people who trade their time for money need to work harder. They need to take on more gigs, more side hustles just to try to keep up. Because in their world, everything just got more expensive. The thing is, in this system, wealthy people do not trade their time for money. They own assets. Money creates money. Owning assets is like a money magnet. This is one of the reasons why some people have a great time manifesting money using the law of attraction and others do not. There's a systemic layer to that question, which I do explore on this channel. This is demonstrated by the Cantillon effect. Richard Cantillon was a French economist, and his main thesis was that those closest to the money printer benefit the most. The data reflects it starkly. 53% of the global population only share 1% of global wealth. That's about 4 billion people who are excluded from economic participation, just because of a structural proximity to the money printer, just because of where we're born in the world. And while money printing is beneficial to asset owners, here's what the fiat system does to workers. We have to work more because prices increase just to keep up, just to keep eating the same foods every week. You have to take on more jobs, more gigs, more side hustles. You start to experience burnout. Anxiety about money becomes the baseline. It's completely exhausting. Is it easy to be fully present in this state when we're in survival mode? And then from a broader perspective, from a personal development and spirituality perspective, are we doing what we actually want to do with our lives? Where are we spending our most limited resource, our life force energy? Many watch their desire for freedom and security slip away. And I know it's tough to be in that position. I look forward to getting to the part of this presentation where I'm going to talk about the solution, but I really want to explain how the system works first. It is designed to make us into human doings rather than human beings. And if you're aware of personal development and spirituality, if you've been in the space for a while, you know the space advocates the opposite. But how can you be from that level of consciousness when you're in everyday survival mode? This system is designed to anchor us in ego consciousness, and the personal development space will just say, hey, look at your individual matrix. If you're struggling, you haven't put in enough work. You haven't aligned with the vibrational frequency of money. While some of us are here as wage workers, the speakers are asset owners. This keeps us focused on ourselves, on the material plane, in survival mode, working even harder in a system designed to steal from us. This is not a personal failing, it's a systemic design. Money printing is theft of our life force energy. Our lifetime is finite, and yet we're trading it for infinite pieces of paper designed to lose value. The system constantly tells us if you work hard enough, if you heal enough, you do the inner work, you can be free, secure, and have an abundant life. But if the container has holes by design, no matter how much water or money we put into it, it's going to keep draining. The bucket is the fiat system. Coming back to our very first slide about all the pain that we could observe in our own lives and in the collective as well. And these are just brief examples, there's so much more. Fiat enforces incentives that lead to these outcomes. The pain that we experience in our own lives and that we see in the collective is always tied back to money for this very reason. By its very nature, it's designed to keep most people in ego consciousness, focused on survival. It is imposed through abundant money and a lot of subconscious beliefs that we tacitly agreed to just by being born on this planet and into this system. But that's the thing, money is just a belief system. It's not backed by anything, not even gold anymore, since the 1970s. It's backed by our trust and faith, our belief, which means that we can change it. So what is the alternative? What does a system outside of this system look like? Now, before I talk about it, I want to caveat heavily. What I'm about to talk about, I do not see as a financial investment. I'm not interested in more fiat. My channel is completely defunded. I have no ads and no sponsors. My only source of income is my book and donations from people who watch this channel. I'm not interested in a system declared to be so by fiat, by decree. I'm interested in a system based on math, physics, and universal laws. There's one specific property of money that we talked about in this video that fiat does not have: scarcity. We talked about how abundant it is and how more money in this system makes us poorer every year. Well, something that has absolute scarcity for the first time in human history is Bitcoin. It has an absolute fixed supply. 21 million, there will never be more than that. That number cannot be changed by decree, by government, or by a central bank. It's not backed by trust and faith in a centralized institution. It's backed by mathematics. And mathematics doesn't print more money to go fund wars. Remember the diamond on the beach from earlier? Scarce things hold value. Bitcoin is the scarcest asset that's ever existed. And unlike real estate in Central Park, for example, it doesn't require enormous capital, brokers, and a bunch of paperwork in order to be able to access it. Bitcoin is also fully decentralized. Like light workers connecting through meditation, Bitcoin is totally decentralized and spread out across the planet. When China tried to ban Bitcoin multiple times, it kept running in Canada, Australia, Kenya, and the UK. We've never had this before. The same asset available to anyone on the planet, regardless of country, background, income, skin color, or the ability to open a bank account. It's incredibly powerful. It cannot be shut down or stopped because no central authority owns it. No CEO, no marketing team, no one that can stop it. And it doesn't even require the internet. You can send it over SMS or radio waves. Now let me show you what scarcity does to our purchasing power over time. This was our earlier slide about fiat and purchasing power. Here's what happens in Bitcoin. One whole Bitcoin in 2011 could maybe buy a quarter cart of food. Not much. However, in 2015, just a few years later, one whole Bitcoin could buy 3 cartfuls of food. In 2025, a whole Bitcoin could buy 3 carts full of food, a fancy vacation, and a Tesla Model 3. Not that we're going to spend our money on that, but just to give you an example. Here's another example with iPhones. In 2011, an iPhone 4S cost 162 Bitcoin. A few years later, just a half a Bitcoin. By 2024, you could get a very powerful iPhone 16 for a fraction of a Bitcoin, a tiny amount. And this is happening everywhere, even in housing. Houses become cheaper in Bitcoin terms. What is happening here? How is that possible? Well, Bitcoin is the first global free market where prices fall. I'd highly recommend Jeff Booth's work and his book, The Price of Tomorrow, to understand this. And I like to illustrate it with an image. If you had Bitcoin today, it would just be like planting a seed. It's not going to grow right away and have a big tree, of course. We have to be patient and wait, just like the laws of nature. If we come back in 4 years, there may be a larger tree. By 8 years, it may start to yield fruit. And by 12 years, a lot more. The goal of the illustration is to demonstrate a growth in our purchasing power through patience and natural laws, the law of compounding and the law of abundance. So my invitation to friends and family who ask me about this is to plant a seed and forget about it. Let nature do its work. Continue to learn. Learn about gardening. Trust the process and see where it takes you. A key takeaway from this presentation is that Bitcoin is a system outside of the system. It's the first time that we've had that in 5,000 years. I usually ask the group, what would it be like to live in a world beyond money? Or with money still, but you don't have to worry about it anymore. It's no longer affecting everything in society. Most people tell me I'd be with family. I'd be creative. I'd do things for the joy of doing them. I'd learn things to learn about things. I'd contribute something. I'd be present. Maslow mapped this out beautifully. At the base of his hierarchy of needs, we find physical safety, food, shelter. Billions of people across the planet are suppressed here because of the very nature of the system into which we were born. In the West, generally speaking, this is often taken care of because we're closer to the top of the monopoly on money. But the higher we go, the more we can have these things taken care of. But the love and belonging layer, the genuine connection, community, this has significantly eroded since 2020. And the layers above it, esteem, self-actualization. For some people, they're becoming less and less a priority. A lot of people can't access that because they're in survival mode. I demonstrated why earlier, but Bitcoin takes this structure and flips it upside down, where the upper layers of Maslow's hierarchy of needs become accessible to more people. When your future is taken care of, when your present is secure, when the container, the system holds what you put into it, when it gives back to you for the value that you create for society, the fear quiets. And the question becomes, what does it mean to be human? I don't want you to go out and buy Bitcoin. That's not the point of this video. Just keep learning more. I didn't think any of this was possible until I met Bitcoiners and actually saw people living it. People who stepped off the fiat treadmill. People who were financially sovereign, secure, and free. If any of this landed for you, my book Beyond Money goes into all of it in much more depth. The individual matrix, the systemic matrix, the full framework. And it's available at Daniella.io/book. And if this kind of content was valuable, consider zapping me some sats at Daniella.io/V4V or donating fiat to support my work, which goes a long way since none of it is supported by sponsors or ads. Thank you for being here.